Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sagana Bhavatu Saganau Bhunaktu Sagaviriyam Karavavakai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavakai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dokta Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dukdam Gitamritam Mahat. That is, Sarvo Upanishado Gavo, with a simile, the entire science which is being unfolded in the Bhagavad Gita is brought out in a simile form. Sarvo Upanishado Gavo. If all the Upanishads were to be compared to a cow, and Dokta Gopala Nandanaha, and the one who milks it is said to be Gopala. That is Lord Krishna. And Partho Vatsaha. And Arjuna is the person who is the calf nearby. Because the cow will not yield its milk without the calf beside it. So you need the calf. So the milk can flow out of the cow for the milker to milk it. And it is meant for whom? Of course, the calf also drinks a little bit of the milk. But it is basically meant for Sudhir Bhokta, those good souls with a good mind and a good heart. So this milk is meant for them. And what type of milk? Gita Amritam Mahat. And when they drink this, the essence of the entire Bhagavad Gita, then they will attain the immortal state. So in this sense, it is, so the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the entire knowledge spectrum of the Upanishads. And the person who brings out and extracts this knowledge, like the milker milking the cow, is said to be Lord Krishna, with a calf which is likened to Arjuna who is beside. And it is meant for the good humanity with a good mind and a good heart, so that they can receive this knowledge. So the Bhagavad Gita contains the total essence of the ancient wisdom. As we had indicated yesterday, it contains the essence of the Upanishads. It also contains many aspects of the disciplines found in the Eightfold Path of Patanjali, the yogic science, wherein each person is bound to the mind and bound by the mind, and how to obtain release from the mind, from the workings of the mind, and thereby to understand the mind and go beyond the mind. That science of the Yoga Sutras, has been incorporated into the body of the Gita. Then at the same time, the Sankhya knowledge also has been incorporated by Lord Krishna, because one is bound to nature and bound by nature, bound to your human nature and bound by it, and therefore how to obtain your release from nature as such. Then the fourth aspect, which is incorporated in the Gita, is something unique to Lord Krishna. The science of action, the science of karma yoga, which is something very new indeed in its presentations. How actions, everyday actions done by mortal man, could be converted and can, as a spiritual discipline meant for one's liberation. Of course, prior to that, people did perform actions, but they were ritualistic actions. Various types of rituals and ritualistic actions were done. But Lord Krishna gives a new meaning to the concept of action. Not rich actions, daily actions are to be done as a ritual, not ritualistic actions as mentioned in the religious tradition, but day-to-day actions are to be done like a ritual. And when you do so, these actions done as karma yoga, the day-to-day actions, will sanctify a person and lead him to enlightenment. So thus, this is a unique contribution of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Then, having said this much, now we find that Arjuna was in a state of dilemma. Whether to act or not to act. And at the same time, he was psychologically confused and he had a breakdown, a psychological breakdown. And he said in verse number 9, Arjuna's mind state and as to what is transpiring is being indicated by Sanjaya. So Sanjaya says, Eva muktva rishikesham gudakesaha parantapaha na yotsya id gominda muktva tushnim babuvaha. So having said so much in the earlier verses, wherein Arjuna was lamenting that he was going to kill these people and he was confused as to what duty was, and therefore he needed an instruction. And having said this, Eva Muktva, having said this to Arjuna, Eva Muktva Rishikesham, and he told this to Rishikesham, to Lord Krishna, and Gudakeshaha Parantapa, and who is the one who said all these things, who is going through these lamentations? It is Gudakeshaha Parantapaka. It is none other than Arjuna himself, who was a Parantapaha. Paran Shatrun Tapayati iti Parantapaha. So he is the one who scorches his enemies. That Arjuna, who was so courageous and so bold and valorous as a warrior, as an individual, and not only that, at the same time, Arjuna was not an ordinary person. He had mastery over himself. So that's why the word Gudakesha is used here. The word Gudakesha refers to Gudaka Ishaha, the one who has overcome sleep. So as far as Arjuna was concerned, he was not a lazy person. He had the capacity to go to sleep at will. Gudaka means sleep, and Ishaha, the Lord of who is the master of his sleep. So he could sleep at will. So no matter what the situation was, he could still keep on being engaged in the operations of life without permitting the drowsiness and sleepiness to overcome him. So that was that Arjuna indeed, who has now become dejected, despondent, and he was seated on the chariot, having put his bow aside, and in a sorrowful state. And this same Arjuna, who was also called, so he's the one who is master of himself, is now a broken down person. And then at the same time, Gudakeshaka also means he who has got luxurious black hair. So that was another character which Arjuna had. Gudakeshaka, thick black hair. He was endowed with that. So he was lamenting and telling all these things to Rishikesham. And what did he say? No yotsya idi govindam, I shall not fight, I will not fight. No yotsya idi govindam uktva, I will not fight, I shall not fight. And uktva tushnim babuvaha, and he became quiet, he became silent. This Arjuna, this mighty Arjuna, he had mentioned that na yotsya, I will not fight, and became silent. And to whom did he tell this? He told it to none other than Rishikesha. Now this is being narrated by Sanjaya to the king Dhritarashtra in this particular verse as to the state of affairs of Arjuna. And who is Rishikesha? So that's another word used for Lord Krishna. Rishika, Isha. So Rishika is senses. Isha is the Lord, the master of his senses. So when a man becomes a master of his own senses, he becomes master of everything and master of the universe too, the Lord of the universe. So he was telling this to Lord Krishna, who is the master of the universe, and that in Krishna, who was also known as Govinda. So Govinda is another name used for Lord Krishna, and it means the all-knowing, all-wise, all-knowing, all-wise, the good Lord, who has got the universe under his control and command and directs the universe to go in its own rhythm. So that is why in the context of the teaching, you will find that Lord Arjuna was the person who was seated in the chariot as a warrior, but his charioteer was Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna was holding the reins of the horses to permit the horses, to make the horses go in the way that he wants it to proceed. So that itself should indicate to you that he's not only holding the reins of the horses, of the chariot, but he's also holding the reins of the course of the entire universe. And he's holding it in such a way that he would permit the flow of things to happen and have a control over it. And permit and allow the universe to go in the rhythm that he wants it to go through, because he is a master of the whole universe. So that is why symbolically he's holding the reins of the horses, or horses of the chariot, because now he is going to control the entire war situation, and not only the war situation, but also at the same time, he's also as the Lord of the universe, is also in charge of the operations and the way by which the universe to go in its own rhythm and pattern of movement. So that is why at the end of the war, Gandhari, the mother of Duryodhana, was going into the battlefield after the war was over, and rolling the bodies of all the sons and lamenting and weeping because it was her children who had died in the war. And then in the course of it, she saw the body of Abhimanyu. Now, Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna. And he too had also been killed in the war. And the moment she saw Abhimanyu's body lying on the ground, the battlefield, she became very, very sorrowful. And then at that time, Krishna appeared. And when Krishna appeared, Gandhari, she got so angry with Krishna. She told him, why did you kill this person? Why did you also kill this person? So she didn't say that the others killed. Why did you kill? Or why did you cause the death of Abhimanyu, who is going to be the heir of the kingdom? He's going to be the heir to the whole kingdom. And why did you do it? Krishna, of course, smiled. He didn't give an answer. He just smiled, implying that Gandhari is implying that it is you who has been directing the course of this battle. So that is why the word Rishikesha and Govinda has been used in this verse to indicate that Lord Krishna, as the Lord of the universe, is controlling the movement of the situation around. And a question may be asked, why was it then necessary or needful that Abhimanyu, the heir to the kingdom, should also be killed in the war? The answer is, for anything to be obtained, there has to be a sacrifice. A great sacrifice has to be given. So here, it is Abhimanyu, the future king. He was to be the sacrifice for the whole process, so that the Pandavas could obtain their victory subsequently. So you got to give something to obtain something. So that is the situation. So therefore, here also, having told Krishna, I will not fight, and Arjuna became tushnim babuva, he became very quiet indeed. He was very stubborn. He had very firmly, in a stubborn manner, told Arjuna, I will not fight. I will not do it. Now it is said that in the world there are 4 types of people who make a very strong resolve to do or not to do. Either to do something or not to do something. And when they make a resolve, it's a very strong resolve indeed. It's very difficult to get them out of it. And the 4 people are, when a little boy makes a resolve, he's very adamant about it. All of you know very well. When a boy says, no, I won't, he's very stiff and adamant about it. So it's called Balahat. In Hindi, it's called the stubbornness of a boy, Balahat. So that fellow says, no, he says, yes. It's very difficult to get him out of it. Then Strihat. The second person is Stri. A woman, when a woman says no, means it is no. When she says yes, means it is yes. So there also it's very difficult to get them out of that situation. So that's a second hut, a firm resolve. They're very stubborn about it. Then the third person is the king. When a king makes a resolve, because he is a strong man, he'll follow it up, whatever it be. So the resolve of the king is also a very strong resolve. Then the 4th person, so that is called Raja Hut. And then the 4th hut is Yogi Hut. The yogis, when a young fellow becomes a yogi and he says that I want to realize God, he's very stubborn about it. He goes with it with all his might, no matter what happens. He follows it up to the very end itself. I will go out and try to attain liberation, enlightenment. So that is Yogi Hut. He will go through his practices very rigorously and strongly in spite of all the obstacles which may come in the way. So these are the 4 people who have got a very stubborn nature. And therefore here also Arjuna had said, I will not fight. Now to this person who had said this, now gently Lord Krishna has to bring him out of the situation. He has to very gently and intelligently bring him out. So therefore this is what Arjuna said, and he became quiet. Sushnim babuvaha. And then to him, then Tamuvacha Rishikeshaga, then to him, Tamuvacha Rishikeshaga Prahasanniva Bharata Senayor Ubayor Madhye Vishidantam Idam Vachaha. Then Sanjay is narrating the situation. He's saying, oh Bharata, or Dhritarashtra, or the scion of the dynasty, the Bharata dynasty, Tamuvacha to this Arjuna, Tamuvacha Rishikesha Prahasanniva, Tamuvacha Rishikesha Prahasanniva, as if with a smile. As if with a smile now Lord Krishna has acquired a smile. And he is now telling Idam Vachaha, said these words to Arjuna. And where? Senayor Ubayor Madhye Vishidantam. So in the midst of the battlefield, to Arjuna who was dejected, Vishidantam, who was dejected and sad and despondent, and who had firmly said that I will not fight, and who had become quiet, to him, Lord Krishna said the following words. So now the instruction proper of the Bhagavad Gita begins from this verse onwards. That is the verse number 11. That's the beginning of the instruction. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So the good Lord said, Asocyan Anvasochastvam Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase Gatasu Nagatasumscha Na Anisochandi Panditaha. O Arjuna, Asocyan Anvasochastvam. Thou grievest for those people who deserve not to be grieved for. And yet at the same time, you speak at Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase, and you speak words of, as if, wise words, Prajna, as if Vadamscha Bhashase, as if words, you're speaking words of wisdom. Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase. May you understand, Gadasun Agadasumscha Na Anusochandi Panditaha. The Panditaha, the wise people, no grieve for those people, no Gatasun, who have already gone away, who are dead, and Agatasum, so nor do they grieve for those people who are going to die. So the wise neither grieve for the dead nor for those who are going to die. And yet at the same time, you are apparently speaking words as if they are words, wise words indeed. But at the same time, you are lamenting. Asocyan and Vasochasta, and you're lamenting for those who need not be grieved for. Asocyan and Vasochasta, and you're grieving. The two don't go together. Words of wisdom and with a state of wisdom in a person and lamentation do not go together. So that is why he says, as you are speaking as if in a wise manner. But may you understand, Panditaha, the wise, neither grieve for the dead nor for those who are going to die. And at the same time, you're grieving for those, Asocyan, Bhishma and Drona, the two great warriors in the battlefield, and his great teachers indeed. They have come here knowingly and have understood their fate. They know very well, your teachers, Bhishma and Drona. They understand very well that they are fated to participate in this great event or the battle event. And in the process, they also know very well that they are fated to die. So knowingly, they have, out of their wisdom, They have accepted their fate, knowing what their fate is, and they have accepted it. So a wise man is that person who accepts his fate as it comes along. You're fated. A person is fated for some things to happen. So here also, as far as these people are concerned, they knew that they were fated to participate in this war, and they are to die in the war too. For Bhishma would be killed in the war by Shikandi, and Dronacharya will be killed in the war by Drishtadyumna. And it was all part of the whole process, wherein it has been prophesied that these two young men, young warriors, would be responsible for the death of both Bhishma and Drona. And they knew it very well. So therefore, you don't have to lament over them, because they knowingly know what they are doing. They are wise people. So Asoch, and therefore, and yet to speak at seeming words of wisdom. Gatasu, nagatas, and you are grieving for those people who are dead and gone, and who are going to die. So the wise do not grieve for the dead, nor for the living. That is the nature of a wise person. Normal people in the world grieve over the death of those gone away. And they also grieve for those people who are everyone is going to die. Everyone, every day is one day nearer his death deed. So it's a natural thing. So why to lament over what is natural? Accept it. Whenever it comes. So the wise don't get despondent over it. So they naturally die. There is no need to be afraid of death. And why you should not be afraid of death is going to be outlined in the next few verses. And the wise people have this knowledge, this understanding. And then, na anusochandi panditaha. The word panditaha has been used. So panditaha means the wise people. So the word wise people has been used, panditaha. So the wise people do not lament. So the word panda here means the one who has got his mind in their God nature. He is called a panda, and who possesses it is said to be a pandit. So one who has got, not the caste pandits. They have got that's a different issue altogether. But a wise person is called as a pandit. So panditaha, the wise, do not grieve for those. And then the reason he is giving in the next verse number 12. Natve vaham jatunasam, natvam neme janadipaha, na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamata param. May you understand, Krishna, Arjuna. Natu eva aham jatunasam. There was never a time when I was not. Double negatives. That means I was always there. I am always there. So natu eva aham jatunasam. There was never a time when I was not. Natvam. No, you too. Na ime janadipaha. No, there was never a time when these kings and warriors around, there was never a time when they were also not. That means they were also existent. So therefore, Lord Krishna is saying, I have always been, you have always been, and all these kings too have also always been. And at the same time, na chaiva na bhavishyamaka sarve vayamata paraham. And henceforth also. So we all had been before. We had all been before. And in the future also, na chaiva, now it is not that we will not be in the future. We will also be in the future to all of us. We were in the past. We all will be also in the future. Of course, we are at the moment in the present too. At the present moment, we are all there. So therefore, in all the three periods of time, past, present, and the future, we are always there indeed. We are always there. Now here, this particular verse can be looked at from 2 points of view. That is, the first point of view is from the point of view of the absolute truth. From the point of view of the Atman, which is the Atman with a capital A. Atman is the reality of your existence. The reality of your existence has always been there. Even before you came into this body, it was there. While you are living in this body, your reality, your true reality was there or is there. And after you leave this body also, your true reality will also be there. Your true reality. So in all the three periods of time, your true reality has always been there. So this is from the perspective of Atman, the reality of an individual. Then, from the point of view of the body, Deha Drishti. One is Atma Drishti, the other is Deha Drishti. From the point of view of the body, the physical body, also once again, every one of us was there in the past. You as an individual. So from the point of view of the body, or the physical body, as an individual soul, now we are looking at it from two different points of view. One is from your true reality, as the true reality, which is the Atman with a capital A. The other is from the point of view of your individual soul. And sometimes the word Atman is also used with a small a for the individual soul. So this individual soul of yours, which is called as a soul, or you may call it as a so-called soul, your individuality was there in the past. So it is not that it was not there, it was there in the past before you took birth in this body. Your individual soul existed in some character or form else before this. Of course, it is there right now encased in this body, And later on also, at the termination of this physical body, the physical human body, the individual soul will carry on. So the individual soul is also existing in all the three periods of time. It was there before you were born in this body, while in this body, and thereafter, after you leave the body too. So from 2 points of view, this particular verse is to be understood. So now this brings in the concept of the reincarnation of each one's soul. So this is where some of these verses here in the next following verses along with this is going to indicate to you, as is giving you a scriptural proof and an evidence for the reincarnation of the soul. Because people wonder, where do we get this knowledge? Where do we get this understanding with respect to the transmigration of the individual soul? So that is being implicitly implied here in this particular verse. So that is to say, from the point of view of your own intrinsic divine reality, you are permanent. You were, you are now, and you shall be. Then from the point of view of the body, the individual soul. Now may you understand this much. What is understood as the individual soul is a subtle body. It's a subtle body. And this subtle body is what is called as the individuality of a person. So therefore, when the person leaves this particular body, it is his subtle body which leaves. His subtle body entered this physical body, dwells in this physical body for a certain period of time, maybe 50, 60, 80 years, and thereafter, this very subtle body, at the time of the physical death of the physical body, it vacates this body. It's a house. So this physical body is a house which is being occupied by the subtle body in order to undergo certain experiences in life and to mature out of these experiences. And then thereafter, having obtained maturity via experiences, it now arrives at a point when it is able to understand and realize its true nature as the divinity in existence. So this is the purpose. So therefore, Arjuna, the wise know all this. Therefore, they don't lament over it. You are lamenting. You are lamenting over the situation. So, therefore, from the point of view of the physical body, it is not that we shall not be, we shall all continue to be on and on. Then having said this much, in the next verse, the 13th verse, he's elaborating on this. Dehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptihi dhiras tatra na muhyati. Yatha, just as, it's now giving an example to make matters clear. Yatha, just as. Asmin dehe, in this body. Dehinaha, the embodied individual. You are the embodied individual who goes by the name of Tom, Dick, and Harry, whatever your name is. Kaumaram, Yauvanam, Jara. This individual person who goes by so many names, whatever the name is, he goes through various stages in life. And what are those stages? Kaumaram, childhood; Yauvanam, youth; Jara, old age. He goes through all these stages, the various stages of life. The childhood years, the youth, the adolescent years, the youth, middle age, and then old age. All these phases of life one goes through. But there is one thing unique about it. It is one and the same person who's going through all of this. Not that there is a new man coming in. Just so, yatha, just as it's the same person who was enjoying his childhood, is the same good old young boy who has now become an old man. He's not a new man. He's the same young fellow who has now become old. So there's a continuity there. There is a continuity there. So in the same way too, just as much as in this body itself, there is a continuity going on. So also, tatha, in the same way too, dehantara praptihi. In the similar way too, dehantara, after this, you will obtain another body. You will obtain another body. Dhiraha tatrana muhyati. Therefore, the word dhira here means the wise are not deluded by this, because it's a very natural process, a change in status. It is said that this physical body of ours gets renewed every 7 years. Every 7 years, the cells in the body get so renewed that you have a new body. But unfortunately, you don't become a new person. But you are the same good old person who has got a renewed body once in 7 years. And here also, in this process of living your life, you are the same good old guy. And that is why you say, when I was young, I did that, I did this. Now in my old age, I am unable to do all these things. What a pity indeed. So in this manner, it's the same old guy who is lamenting about it. So also hereafter. So now here is a very clear proof, scriptural evidence, for the concept of reincarnation or rebirth. You are the same person who gets reborn as an individual in another body itself. In fact, the remarkable thing is that even while living in this body, you are in a very mysterious manner acquiring the future character of the body as to where you will go and how you will be going. This subtle body of yours is so remarkable that it requires always another body to indwell. The subtle body cannot remain by itself without indwelling in another body. So in this instance, your subtle body is indwelling in this physical body. Now, when this body is going to obtain another body later on at the time of death, thereafter, it will attain another body. But what type of future body it is going to attain is already being indicated. And this particular, and another beautiful, remarkable thing is that a character of the future body to be, is being formed here itself. So that when you depart from this body, you are departing like in a space shuttle. When you leave this body, you're getting docked onto another space shuttle, like a space shuttle, in order to arrive at the future body. In order to arrive at the future body, wherever it is, it may be immediately after. So there are three routes that a person takes. The three routes are that he gets reborn again immediately, or he goes to the heavenly regions and then comes back, or he goes to other regions and then comes back. So therefore, these are a number of routes that a person takes, and according to where he is to be born, accordingly, the future body to be is taking shape. And you will take shape, and that future body to be will be formed like a space shuttle, and you will get docked onto that and then depart from this physical body. Then you will, as you vacate it, you will step onto that space shuttle body and then proceed on your way to obtain the next body. So therefore, these are mystery indeed. So therefore, the wise do not grieve over this. Wise do not grieve over the departure. It's only departing. So what is there to lament over it? Then furthermore, in life, what should you do then? Matras sparshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkha daha agama apainoho anityaha tan sitikshasva bharata. O Bharata, O Arjuna, you belong to this Bharat dynasty, the dynasty, just like, as it is said, the solar dynasty. So here also there is this dynasty is called the Bharat dynasty. And you are a member of this dynasty, O Bharata. And the word Bharata has been used here in the Bhagavad Gita addressing Arjuna. Really speaking, the old name for India was Bharat. Bharat was the name which later lost its character as Bharat, and then it came to be called as India. How did it become India? The word, people in the ancient days who were living in the Persian area, they used to refer to the people of Bharat, the people of India. And when you ask them who are those people, they say they are the people living beyond the Sindhu River. Beyond the Sindhu River. So the word Sindhu got corrupted, and the people living beyond the Sindhu River, which is now flowing through Pakistan, that Sindhu River. So people living beyond the Sindhu River. And they got corrupted, and this word Sindhu became Hindu. This is how all of you became Hindus. But really speaking, the word is not Hindus. The people of India in the ancient days were called as Bharatiyas. Bharatiyas. And the word Bharata, Bharatiyas, is very significant. The word Ba means that which is effulgent, that which is luminous, self-luminous, self-effulgent. And what is that which is effulgence, full of effulgence? It is the divine. The divine by its nature is full of effulgence. It abides and exists in its own glorious effulgent beingness, effulgence. And Bharata, Rata means the persons, those who revel in that, those who revel in the glory of their divine nature are said to be Bharatiyas. The people of Bharat, the people of this area called Bharat, the Hindu of which is called today as India. Today it's called as India. The proper original word was Bharat. So therefore here also, O Bharata, Lord Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Bharata. Bharata means you are not an ordinary person, Arjuna. You are, it's indicative, this very word itself is indicative that you are of a spiritual lineage, of a divine lineage. And you are going to revel subsequently in your divine nature. Bharataha, who is those who revel in their divine nature, Bharataha. So therefore he's referring to Arjuna as by these terms. Then he says, Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya, O Kundi Putra Kaunteya, Sita Ushna Sukha Dukkha Daha. After all, the contact of the senses with their sense organs is a very natural thing. So Matraha is senses, Sparshaha, when it comes in contact with the sense objects, then naturally, O Kaunteya, son of Kunti, they give rise to Sukha and Dukkha. Sukha, Sita Ushna, Sukha Dukkha Daha. They give you Sukha and Dukkha, or they give you a sensation of Sita, cold. In winter, it will give you a sensation of being cold. And in the summertime, it is hot, sweltering hot, because the senses have come in contact with their surroundings, sense organs. And therefore, you have this natural sensation coming into you all the time. Sita Ushna Sukha Dukkha Daha. So your sense organs automatically, they give you and give rise to the sensations of pain and pleasure, the sensation of heat and cold. So it is said that if it is very hot, what should you do? You sweat it out. There's nothing else to do if it is very hot. That's all that you do. You pleasantly sweat it out. And if it is very cold, and if you don't have the necessary clothes, what should you do? Shiver it out. Endure, as simple as that. Either you sweat it out or shiver it out. And it will last for some time. That's all. And this is very natural. So, this is a very natural process indeed. Similarly also, all the other sensations that you may have, happiness and joy, whatever it is, they're all They come due to contact of the senses with their sense organs, sense objects. The senses come in contact. They naturally give you these sensations. So here also, O Arjuna, so these sensations are received by the mind and they are a natural process indeed. Agama apainoh. So therefore they come and go. Nothing is permanent in the world. However dejected you are, even the dejection also will go away if you endure it for some time. So that is why when a person is in a very bad situation, when he feels like taking away his life, then all that you have to do to him is to just keep on talking with him. Just keep on talking to him, and that phase will disappear. The phase of extreme dejection, extreme sorrow will pass away. Everything passes away. This too shall pass away. So they come and they go, every sensation, mental sensations, physical sensations, mental sensations, psychological situations, hardships, everything will come and then go. So therefore, agama apainoh, and therefore they are anityaha, they are not eternal. They are only temporal, temporary indeed. Pain and pleasure, joy and happiness, they are all temporal things which come and go due to certain situations. Therefore, what should you do? Titikshasva, may you endure it. So here in the first lesson is being given to Arjuna. You have to endure the hardships of life. When you endure the hardships of life, that will make you stronger. Whatever be the hardships vary from individual to individual, and they are inevitable. They have come, they have to be experienced and endured, and in enduring it, it will pass away, it will go away. But in the process of enduring it, what happens is you become stronger. You will become psychologically strong. When you endure something, when you endure a hardship, that is why God gives you difficulties and hardships in life, so that you can go through that process in order to make you strong. Mentally, emotionally, psychologically strong, so that you can get over your lamentations. So they have got emotional lamentations, mental, psychological. So you've got to get clear yourself of all of these. So therefore, in order to overcome all of them, God in his benign wisdom graciously gives you hardships. Of course, you know very well that even when you have little children, you don't want to spoil them. You put them through a process whereby they become stronger. So here also, you're smelted in the fire of life, and purified. So gold is smelted in the fire and purified. So here also in the fire of life, every person is smelted. And during the process of being smelted with hardships and difficulties, every person will have to endure it. The more you are able to endure, the more stronger do you become. Because to attain God is not meant for weaklings. You've got to be strong. You must have the strength to discard, to give up, to kick away, to leave away this glamorous universe which is charming you. You've got to rise above it. And for that, you need strength. If you don't have that strength, you cannot get out of this glamorous universe which is capturing your immediate attention. So therefore, you've got to become strong, mentally strong, spiritually strong. And life is a process which enables you to do that. So by going through the difficulties and hardships of life, you become more and more detached, and you become more and more inwardly stronger. So at a certain point, you can get yourself dissociated from this entire world indeed. So that is why Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, who lost her husband at a young age, and at the same time she had to bring up her boys, she told Lord Krishna, "Oh Krishna," the mother of Arjuna is telling Krishna, long ago itself, she was telling Krishna, "Oh Krishna, give me hardships so that I can always remember you." So that was her request. It's because during trials and tribulations of life, it's at that time that you are forced to think of God, of the divine. Look for Him for guidance, for help, for succor. So therefore, titikshasva, may you endure the hardships which are coming your way. And you are no ordinary person, no Arjuna. You are the member of the Bharat dynasty. Huh? And those are those people who are reveling in the divine Ba, the self-luminous divine principle. Your ancestry is such that they revel in the divine. Bharat, you are a Bharatiya. Huh? Therefore, in order to attain your true status, may you endure difficulties and hardships. Then he continues this and says in the verse number 15, Yam hina vetayanti ete purusham purusha rishabha sama dukkha sukam dhiram so amrutatvaya kalpate. Yam hina vetayanti ete. So yet that individual who is not yet afflicted by these the sukha and dukkha, by the pain and pleasures which come his way, who is not affected by them, if you please. Such a person, such a dhiram, such a wise person, a brave person, he amritatvaya kalpate, he is fit for, makes himself fit for the immortal state. Amritatvaya kalpate. So that Purusham, that individual, O Purusha Rishabha, O Arjuna, you are now, he's now, Lord Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Purusha Rishabha. So Rishabha is the bull. So you are the bull amongst men. You are a mighty warrior. You are a mighty person. So therefore, Arjuna, that Purusha, that individual, who is able to endure without being affected. So that means by sukha and by pain and pleasure. When pleasure comes, you do not get elated by the pleasure. And when pains come, you do not get depressed. So neither you are elated, nor do you sink into dejection when the opposite comes. So when you are free of these two, elation and dejection, and you are able to maintain an equanimous state of mind, then at that time, such a person becomes amrutatvaya kalpate. He becomes fit for immortality. So he says that Purusham, that individual. So he has now used the word who is not affected by these, Yam Purusham. So once again the word Purusham is being used. Purusha means you are the Purusha. You are that individual who is called as Purusha. Why are you called as Purusha? Because you are abiding in this body. Purushayanat purnatvatva purushaha. Purushayanat, you are abiding in this Puri. This body is said to be a Puri. Puri means a citadel. A citadel with number of gates. How many gates have you? Yes. You have got 10 plus 1, 11 gates. 11 gates you have. And you are abiding in this body with 11 gates. So that's why it's called a Puri. A Puri is a citadel. A citadel is one which has got these gates, through which you enter and through which you exit out. You come in contact with the phenomena outside, and you also have your transactions inside. So you are that person, so Puri, and you are abiding in this body of yours. So therefore you are called a Purusha, Purusayana. That person who has got these apertures within him. And then you also call and who is that person who is so abiding in this body? Purusham. And you are that person who is Purnam. Purnatva, Purusayanatva. That means you are Purnam. You are self-complete. You are full. You as in your true status, you are full Purnam. You are self-complete in all sense of the term. So such a person you are, and that state of self-completeness is what is called, when you experience that state of self-completeness, which is there already present within you, that is called as enlightenment. When you get enlightened to your fullness, which is the perfected state of beingness, and which is called as Purusha, which is Purnam, which is ever full indeed, which is self-complete. So for such a person, such an individual who will eventually arrive at this state, but in order to arrive at this state, you have to now endure hardships without losing your balance. And then such a person, Amritatvaya Kalpate, that is to say, you attain to a state which is called as Brahma Bhava. Brahma Bhava. That is to say, Amritatvaya, Amritam means the state of immortal state, which is a state of Brahman, the divine. And in order to attain to the state of Brahman, you have got to maintain this Brahma Bhava. That is to say, you have got to be poised in Brahman. Poised in Brahman. You're not yet Brahman. You're not yet experiencing a Brahman nature. It is already there, even though it is already there within you. But in order to experience your Brahman nature, you've got to first arrive at the Brahma Bhava. And in that Brahma Bhava, or the nature of being Brahman, so Brahma Bhava means therein you've got to maintain the state of equanimity. So when you maintain the state of equanimity, you make yourself competent subsequently to attain the glory of your divine nature. So that is what is indicated as Amritatvaya Kalpate. You make yourself competent by this process. So one leads to the other. So when you endure the difficulties and hardships of life without losing your balance, when you are in a state of evenness of mind, that evenness, balanced state of mind is called as Brahma Bhava. And this state will eventually lead you and enable you, as you get more and more stabilized in it, it will enable you to experience your Brahman nature. So therefore, in a very ingenious, intriguing manner, Lord Krishna is gently outlining the way towards your divine nature. And what is this divine nature of yours? What is the character of it? We'll see it tomorrow, the next week, in our next class. Om Tat Sat.